the invisible exhaustion. You open your eyes and feel it again. The weight, the heaviness behind your ribs, the fog in your mind before your feet even touch the floor. You slept, maybe even longer than usual, but you wake up tired again. It's not just physical. It's not just poor sleep. It's not just a lack of coffee. It's something deeper, more persistent, more invisible. You're tired for no reason. But that's the lie you've learned to accept. Because there is a reason. And it's not what the surface world has told you. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. And it's not your fault. You're not tired from doing too little. You're tired because you've been carrying too much for far too long. This tiredness has layers. It's not just in your muscles. It's in your soul. It's the kind of tiredness that lingers even on good days. The kind that makes joy feel like effort. The kind that drains your curiosity, your energy, your will to try. This is not burnout from too much doing. This is burnout from too much being someone you're not. You've performed. You've endured. You've smiled when you wanted to scream. You've said yes when everything inside of you whispered no. You've carried expectations, silence, emotional labor, and unprocessed pain, all while trying to seem fine. No wonder you're tired. Tiredness is a language. Fatigue is not always a malfunction. It's a message. Your body, your psyche, your spirit, they're trying to speak, and they whisper through that constant tiredness. Something's not right. You are misaligned. You're betraying something sacred inside you. But modern life doesn't make room for that truth. We're trained to believe tiredness means we need to hustle harder, wake up earlier, work out more, push through. So, you override the signal. You caffeinate your pain. You numb your intuition. You scroll past your own exhaustion like it's a weakness to be fixed. And yet, it grows louder. Because what you suppress doesn't die. It waits. You're tired of pretending. No one talks about the exhaustion of pretending. The fatigue of showing up with a brave face. Of pretending to be on when you're falling apart inside. It drains your nervous system. It short-circuits your peace. And it convinces your body that survival mode is your default state. You don't even know what real rest feels like anymore. Because even when your body lies down, your soul stays tense. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're just tired of carrying a life that doesn't reflect your truth. That's the hidden cost of self-abandonment. Your energy is leaking where you're not aligned. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And you will call it fate. Your unconscious knows the truth. You're leaking energy where you're lying to yourself. Every time you say I'm fine when you're not. Every time you agree just to keep the peace. Every time you ignore that gut feeling that says this isn't right. Leak, and those tiny leaks, they add up. By the time you get to the end of the day, you haven't run a marathon, but you feel like you did, because your soul ran one. It fought through masks, boundaries, silence, and suppressed emotion, and now it's collapsed inside your chest. That's the tiredness you can't name, but it lives in your bones. Your mind is overstimulated but starving for meaning. We live in a world that bombards you with input, but starves you of truth. You scroll through highlight reels. You listen to endless opinions. You absorb news, noise, narratives. But how often do you hear yourself? This kind of constant input wears down your emotional body, not because of the volume, but because none of it is rooted in you. You're overstimulated but disconnected, plugged in but emotionally numb, constantly reacting but rarely reflecting. And that drains you, because your nervous system isn't meant to live on red alert. Your mind isn't meant to process everything all the time. And your heart, it's not meant to be ignored just to keep up. This is the tiredness of overexposure without intimacy, noise without depth, living without feeling. You don't need more sleep, you need more you. Yes, rest matters. Yes, your body needs time to repair. But what if the rest you crave isn't physical? What if the rest you need is spiritual? What if your exhaustion comes from living out of alignment, from denying your emotions, from abandoning your inner voice to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with? That's the tiredness you wake up with, because even in sleep, your soul doesn't rest when it's not safe to be real. The soul tells the truth even when you don't want to hear it. There's a quiet moment that comes, sometimes at night, sometimes during silence, when you feel a strange kind of ache. You can't name it, but it feels like loss. It's not the loss of a person, it's the loss of yourself. You've lost pieces of you in relationships where you couldn't speak freely. You've lost pieces of you in jobs that fed your bank account but starved your purpose. You've lost pieces of you every time you ignored your intuition for approval. And now your soul is tired of bleeding quietly. It doesn't want you to keep pushing. It wants you to pause, to listen, to return, to stop treating your sensitivity as weakness and start treating it as wisdom. This tiredness is directional. Here's the paradox. Your tiredness isn't a failure. It's a compass. It's pointing you away from the people, habits, roles, and environments that no longer serve you. It's showing you the hidden cost of staying small, the energetic tax of betraying your truth. You've done everything right. You've performed. You've adapted. You've played the part. And now your soul is done pretending. It's telling you, you're not meant to be at war with yourself to be loved. You're not meant to wear masks to belong. You're not meant to survive your life. You're meant to live it. That's the message beneath the tiredness. And that's where the healing begins. You're not tired for no reason. You're tired because you're not meant to live disconnected from yourself. What modern psychology misses. We live in a culture that wants to diagnose everything, label it, treat it, push it into a category where we can say, oh, that's what this is. So, when you say, I feel tired all the time, you're met with predictable replies. Get more sleep, cut back on caffeine, try yoga. Are you depressed? Maybe, but maybe you're not broken. Maybe your soul is responding to an environment that never allowed you to be whole. What if your tiredness isn't a condition to fix, but a symptom of a deeper truth you've been trained to ignore? The psychological blind spot. Western psychology has done incredible work in helping us understand the mind, but it often stops at behavior and cognition and forgets something essential, your soul. Modern frameworks will tell you that your fatigue might be low dopamine, or that you have burnout from external stress, or that your nervous system is overworked. All of these might be true, but they're partial truths. They look at what's visible, what's clinical, what's quantifiable. They don't always ask, what does your tiredness say about the life you've built around you? What emotional weight are you carrying that has no name? Whose silence are you inheriting? Where are you still performing instead of living? These aren't disorders. These are patterns, learned strategies, inherited survival. They won't show up on blood work, but they will show up in your soul. Trauma doesn't always scream. Sometimes it drains you quietly. People think trauma always looks like flashbacks, panic attacks, or crying spells, but often it looks like always needing to be busy, feeling numb when you rest, smiling when you're not okay, saying I'm just tired when what you really mean is I feel unseen, unheard, unknown. Trauma trains you to disconnect, and disconnection is the root of exhaustion, because what's more tiring than living every day without access to your full emotional truth? You become a ghost in your own body, a performer in someone else's script. You're tired not from what you're doing, but from who you have to be to survive. The mental loop that never shuts off. There's another reason you're tired. Your mind never gets to rest. It replays every moment you got it wrong. It worries about how you're perceived. It micromanages how to show up in every situation. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that love was conditional. So now your brain is working overtime to manage perceptions, to stay safe, to be good enough, to avoid rejection. This constant mental labor is invisible, but it's exhausting. You might be sitting still, but inside, your inner child is working around the clock to be loved. That's the kind of tired sleep can't fix. The nervous system that never got to exhale. Let's talk about your nervous system, because this is where psychology often misses the mark. If you grew up in an emotionally unpredictable environment, even if no one laid a hand on you, your nervous system never learned safety. You learned how to anticipate moods, how to keep peace, how to adjust yourself for approval. This constant vigilance becomes your normal. Now as an adult, you can't relax, even in quiet moments, because your body doesn't believe they're safe. You might call it anxiety, you might call it overthinking, but it's really the residue of hypervigilance, the aftershock of living too long in survival mode. And survival is exhausting. Carl Jung, the shadow drains you when it's ignored. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the unconscious part of you that contains your rejected truth, your anger, your sadness, your desire, your authenticity. The more you suppress your shadow, the more psychic energy you spend trying to keep it hidden. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. You're not just tired because of what you're doing. You're tired because of what you're not expressing. Every time you swallow your emotions, deny your creativity, hide your truth, you feed the shadow, and the shadow feeds your fatigue. The false self is heavy to carry. You were taught to wear a mask, maybe not by force, but by culture, family, religion, trauma. You learned to be who they needed you to be, to get approval, to avoid conflict, to belong. That false self may have helped you survive, but it's killing your energy now. You wake up tired because being someone else is heavy. You laugh when you don't feel joy. You say yes when you're exhausted. You say I'm okay when you're actually unraveling. And then you wonder why you can't get through the day, because you're living as someone else. That's why you've internalized performance as worth. Here's a truth many people won't say out loud. You were never taught to just be. You were taught to perform. Perform goodness. Perform competence. Perform stability. Perform spirituality. Perform wellness. You don't rest because rest feels like failure. You don't slow down because productivity is your proof of worth. You don't ask for help because you were praised for doing it all alone. But your soul is done performing. It wants authenticity, not applause. It wants connection, not performance. The exhaustion is your soul's protest. It's saying, I can't keep pretending. I need to come home to myself. The soul doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be heard. This is where modern psychology often misunderstands healing. It looks at symptoms and asks, how do we reduce this? But your soul isn't asking to be reduced. It's asking to be recognized. That tiredness you feel, it's not asking for another prescription. It's asking for permission. Permission to feel what you've buried. Permission to stop proving yourself. Permission to stop being high functioning while spiritually collapsing. Your exhaustion is sacred. It's not weakness. It's wisdom in disguise. It's the soul's way of saying, this version of life is unsustainable. This version of you isn't your truth. Stop tweaking the surface. Go deeper. Tiredness as initiation, not illness. In many ancient traditions, fatigue was not seen as a flaw. It was a threshold, a moment when the soul begins its rebellion against inauthentic living. In Jungian psychology, this moment is called the beginning of individuation, the breaking down of the false self, so the real self can emerge. And what does the false self fear most? Stillness. Because in stillness, the masks fall away, and the truth rises up. You're not sick. You're not broken. You're awakening. This exhaustion isn't the end. It's the beginning. Let's call it what it is. You're not just tired. You're misaligned. You're emotionally full, but spiritually starving. You're busy, but disconnected. You're productive, but unsatisfied. You're alive, but not yet living. Because real energy doesn't come from sleep alone. It comes from alignment, from truth, from wholeness. Real rest begins when you stop abandoning yourself. The soul cost of silence, the unseen consequences of living misaligned. There's a price you pay when you live out of alignment. A quiet, invisible cost that doesn't show up in your bank account, but in your body, in your energy, in your soul. When you silence your truth long enough, your soul begins to speak in other ways, not through words, but through symptoms, exhaustion, numbness, mood swings, insomnia, aches that doctors can't explain, disinterest in everything that used to light you up. It's easy to think something's wrong with you, but what if there's something deeply right trying to wake up? The emotional tax of disconnection. Every time you abandon what you feel, you build a wall between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be. But here's the paradox. That emotional distance you create to stay safe eventually becomes a prison. You stop trusting your feelings. You second-guess your instincts. You become a stranger to yourself. And that internal tension, that contradiction between your truth and your choices, it drains you, not just emotionally, energetically. It's like running a program in the background of your mind, one that's constantly trying to keep your two selves from colliding. And you wonder why you're tired. Because disconnection isn't just lonely, it's exhausting. The body keeps score quietly. When your soul is in conflict, your body carries the war. It doesn't scream right away. It whispers, a tension in your shoulders that never goes away, a clench in your jaw you didn't notice until now, a pit in your stomach when you agree to something you don't want, a wave of fatigue when you walk into certain rooms or hear certain names. These are not just stress. These are signals, somatic echoes of emotional betrayal. Your body isn't malfunctioning. It's messaging. and it's tired of being ignored. Relationships become emotional battlefields. When you live out of alignment, your relationships suffer in subtle but devastating ways. You say yes when you mean no, and then feel resentment you don't understand. You overgive, overextend, overperform, because deep down, you don't believe you're enough as you are. You attract people who reflect your wound, not your worth, because pain seeks the familiar, not the healthy, and you begin to confuse love with exhaustion, connection with caretaking, intimacy with tolerating. You pour from a cup that hasn't been refilled in years, and then blame yourself when you burn out. But it's just not your fault. You were never meant to earn love through depletion. Chronic fatigue, the price of emotional repression. There's something you need to hear. You're not weak because you're tired. You're tired because you've stayed strong through too much. Every time you repress an emotion, anger, grief, fear, desire, it doesn't disappear. It goes inward. It becomes pressure, weight, static energy that doesn't move. Over time, this emotional compression turns into chronic fatigue, not just mental exhaustion, but soul-level depletion, because you're not meant to be a container for unspoken pain. You're meant to feel, to express, to release. But we live in a world that teaches you to keep it in, to smile, to cope, to move on. So you bury it, and the burial ground becomes your body. You build a life that looks good but feels empty. Here's one of the most dangerous consequences of soul tiredness. You build an outer life that others admire, while your inner world is collapsing. You check the boxes: career, stability, relationships. On paper, that looks perfect, but in quiet moments, you feel hollow, like you're watching your own life from the outside, like you're performing for applause you don't even believe in. This is the cost of success without alignment, ambition without soul, achievement without authenticity, and it's one of the heaviest kinds of tired. You lose your internal compass. When you live misaligned long enough, you stop knowing what you actually want. You confuse safety with truth, familiarity with purpose, survival with fulfillment. You become so used to adapting that you forget how to choose. You don't know how to listen to your intuition anymore. You don't trust your no. You hesitate with your yes. And every decision drains you because you've silenced the voice that knows. This isn't just emotional exhaustion. It's existential fatigue, the tiredness that comes from losing your inner North Star. But the good news is, it's never gone. It's just buried beneath the noise. And your tiredness is the signal that it's time to come home. The feedback loop of numbness. One of the most subtle consequences of chronic soul tiredness is numbness. Not the dramatic kind, but the slow dulling of your emotional range. You don't cry as easily. You don't laugh as fully. You don't feel joy, but you don't feel much pain either. You exist in a muted spectrum. It's safer that way, because when you're carrying pain you've never processed, feeling anything feels like too much. So you stay numb, functional, productive, but empty. And over time, that numbness starts to feel normal. You forget what aliveness even felt like. That is the quietest tragedy of all. The soul always knows, even when your mind rationalizes, even when your body adapts, even when you silence the signs. Your soul knows. It keeps whispering through your exhaustion, through your aches, through your I don't know why. But something feels off, because the soul is not fooled by appearances. It doesn't care how successful you look. It cares how true you are. And when you live far from truth, you will feel it, not as guilt, but as fatigue, soul fatigue. That ache that says, there's something more for me, but I've been too tired to go find it. You're not tired because you're broken. You're tired because your soul is asking to be remembered, coming back to life. How to reclaim your energy by reclaiming yourself. The first step in healing soul exhaustion is not adding more to your life, but taking off what was never yours to carry. This isn't about self-improvement. It's about self-return. You don't need another habit tracker. You need a homecoming, not to the person you were, but to the you that was buried under survival. You're not here to push through another day. You're here to wake up, to remember. And that begins with a radical, sacred act. Permission. 1. Permission to stop. The world won't give it to you, so you must give it to yourself. Permission to rest, to disconnect, to not answer that call, to not explain yourself. Permission to pause, because healing doesn't begin in motion. It begins in stillness. Stillness is where the real self rises from the ruins. Stillness is where the masks loosen, where the breath deepens, where the soul finally speaks. You are allowed to stop, not because you've earned it, but because you are human. You are enough, even when you do nothing at all. 2. Speak what was silenced. Energy returns when expression returns. Your exhaustion thrives in repression. It starves your voice, but truth nourishes you. Start small. Write the thing you've been afraid to say. Say no when you've always said yes. Speak your anger. Name your grief. Allow your disappointment. Celebrate your desire. Don't filter it for approval. Say it raw. Say it messy. Say it anyway. Every truth you speak returns a part of your energy to you. Because where expression lives, aliveness breathes. 3. Break the loop of pleasing. The performance has drained you long enough. It's time to release the compulsion to be liked by people who benefit from your silence. This isn't selfishness. It's self-honoring. The truth is, they'll say you've changed, but you're not changing. You're emerging. You're not becoming someone new. You're becoming someone real. Let them misunderstand you. Let them think you're cold, distant, different, because you didn't come here to be digestible. You came here to be free, and freedom is energy. It restores you in ways sleep never could. 4. Choose stillness over stimulation. Not because stillness is trendy, but because stillness is sacred. Carve silence into your day, not for productivity, but for reconnection. Put the phone down, close the laptop, turn off the podcast. Let the silence be uncomfortable. Let the discomfort show you what you've been running from. In that silence, you'll hear the whispers. You're safe now. You can stop performing. You can come back home to yourself. You don't need to meditate perfectly. You just need to be with yourself without judgment. That is where energy returns. That is where tiredness becomes clarity. 5. Reclaim the body you abandoned. Your body is not a machine. It's an oracle, a record keeper, a compass. When you override your body's signals, you drain your energy. But when you listen, when you stretch, breathe, move intuitively, you restore. You don't need to punish yourself into fitness. You need to re-inhabit your body. Feel it. Touch your chest when you breathe. Notice your feet on the ground. Say to yourself, I live here. One belongs here. I'm safe now. Your body doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be heard. And when it's heard, your nervous system begins to exhale. And that exhale is a portal to energy. 6. Make space for what's real. Tiredness thrives in clutter, not just physical, but emotional. Make space for authenticity. Declutter your calendar. Release the relationships that exhaust you. Let go of obligations born from guilt, not truth. Ask yourself, if I weren't afraid, what would I stop doing? If I trusted my soul, what would I walk away from today? Energy flows where truth lives. Create a life that reflects your real values, not what they told you was good, but what feels right to you. And the more aligned your life becomes, the more alive you become. 7. Honor your rhythms, not the clock. You are not a machine. You're not meant to operate in perfect consistency. Some days you rise early. Other days you need more sleep. Some days you're inspired. Others, you feel like retreating. Stop making yourself wrong for being human. The 24/7 hustle myth is a lie. Your soul moves in seasons, not spreadsheets. Begin to track your natural flow. When do you feel alive? When do you feel depleted? Protect what nourishes. Limit what drains. Build your life around your biology, not just your obligations. In that honoring, energy returns. 8. Find what feeds you and prioritize it. Joy is not a luxury. It's a fuel source. And too many people are tired because they've deprived themselves of what makes them feel. Ask yourself, what did I love as a child before I was taught to perform? What makes me lose track of time? What do I do that fills me up even when I'm doing nothing? Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's nature. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's silence. Whatever it is, make space for it again. That's not indulgence. That's medicine. 9. Let grief be part of your awakening. Coming back to life means mourning what you lost while you were gone. Let yourself grieve the years you spent in self-betrayal, the love you gave to those who couldn't hold it, the energy you poured into being liked instead of being free, the innocence you had before the world taught you to shrink. Grief is sacred. It cleanses. It opens. It softens. Don't bypass it. Cry when you need to. Yell when you must. Fall apart so you can fall back in. Grief is not weakness. It's proof that you're finally feeling. And feeling is how the soul wakes up. The return to self is the return to energy. You don't need to become anything. You just need to unbecome everything you were told you had to be. When you do, you'll notice something. You'll wake up with more breath. You'll feel lighter without knowing why. You'll begin to laugh again deeply. You'll feel safe in your body for the first time in years. You'll stop needing approval like oxygen. And the tiredness, it will begin to lift, not because you fixed yourself, but because you found yourself. Final realization. Tiredness was never the problem. Tiredness was your messenger. It was never the enemy. It was the invitation, the inner call, the protest, the nudge, the whisper that said, there's more for you than this. You weren't meant to live halfway alive. You're not here to perform, you're here to be. You're not tired for no reason. You're tired because your soul is done being silenced. Now it's time to listen. Now it's time to return. Now it's time to live. Welcome home to your energy. Welcome home to your real self.